this investigative process. I believe, and I submit to you, that the investigative process is something more than just this some flimsy, outline of procedures that you might follow. That's not the purpose. The policies in the investigative process are very defined. It tells you exactly what an officer, an employee of the county would expect to happen, how it will happen, and what is expected of that. That's not some flimsical type of activity. It's a very specific manner in which you're supposed to go about it. The importance of that, and I think there is the most probably glaring, if you will, omission in this case is the absence of Captain Doffenmeyer. That is not by accident, I submit to you. She was served. She's a direct employee of Mr. Reckenwald. A direct employee. They knew she should have been here today because she would have train wrecked this investigation. She knows the policies and procedures, and when they cut her out of this, they don't want to see her again. When they cut her out, when this thing was reopened.
I'm going to object. That's not what the evidence shows. Mr. Smith testified that she accompanied him to every interview in the reopened investigation.
Yeah.
I think this is improper closing.
Mr. Reckenwald made no attempt to call her yesterday. What does that tell you? You get to decide for yourself. He knew she was subpoenaed. He knew that we wanted her here. He knew that she had relevant testimony for this board. And do you think he called her, brought her here? Transparency. This process is about being transparent. You don't expect to get something in a personnel board. Oh, well, you didn't ask for it. Oh, or alternatively, we thought you had it. Which one is it? This is about transparency. Employees should expect to know and to get and to have that information. It shouldn't be hide the ball. It shouldn't be when we get to that personnel board, we're going to make sure our investigator is somewhere else. We're not going to ask that investigator to come here and explain to this board the process. She could have been here, and it is the most glaring indictment of this matter, is the fact that she's not here. This is a county employee with, albeit a non-binding, but it's a county subpoena. And it's the appointing authority's employee. The county employees deserve better than that. They shouldn't show up at these things and be snowballed without having these people available, somebody that pertinent to this investigation. The other side of this thing is the division of responsibility. Nobody wants to take investigative responsibility. The county says, well, we did some at the division level, but when we questioned them on that and cornered them on that, no, that's down here at the Beach Department Services. But then you heard Director Sweat say, they took it away from me. They took it away from me. It's really, the decision's made it up here. So they just keep pointing fingers. Nobody wants to take the responsibility to perform this investigative process, and nobody made an attempt to do it. The investigator, now I think it's most, you heard from Mr. Smith. He sat up here and told you, and he admittedly told you, I don't know anything about the policeman's bill of rights. That's why Captain Doffenmeyer at least accompanied me. And I perused at some point the investigative policies. That was what he told me. And he was very cavalier about it. You heard him. He was very cavalier. Maybe I followed him. I didn't really pay attention to it. That's not what you expect from an internal affairs investigator. That's not how you conduct internal affairs. Internal affairs is strict business. We're not cavalier. We don't make up, and we don't have people who stayed at a Holiday Inn Express or who are in the county, in the legal department, or just come right in and be an investigator one day. Come on in. You go ahead, take this over, and you investigate. That's not what you expect. They had a qualified investigator. Now, I may not agree with Captain Doffenmeyer's conclusions, but the process she was following was the appropriate process. And I agree with the process she was following up until October 13th was the way that you would expect it. She took in the evidence. She made a report. You all have heard that report quite a bit. She made findings. That's her opinion. We may not agree with them, but she made findings. Those findings were directed to Director Sweat, which the policies provided for, and that was the end of following any investigative policies. And there's a reason for that. They knew there was no basis to fire Captain Gardner. Director Sweat told you. He told you I wouldn't have fired him. I'm not going to fire him based on that first investigation. He was as clear as he could be about that. So what do? You're going to fire this officer. What do? You reopen. You reopen it. Get rid of your investigator. You replace them with your county attorney, who is representing personally one of the witnesses, and you replace them with the other investigator is Nancy Jones. And she's an excellent attorney, but I doubt she's ever been in here on behalf of any of these employees. Not a very objective investigation going down this road. And they didn't, and the letter is a very simple letter from Mr. Collins. It says we reopen this investigation to protect your due process rights. Due process. This was about providing Captain Gardner due process. That's what this thing was about. Does what you've heard sound like this was an attempt by the county to protect his due process rights after October 13th? Is that what you heard in this case? I submit it wasn't what you heard. You heard a lot of things, but that wasn't the purpose of it. Every one of the officers, every one of them have come in here and told you that nothing inappropriate happened at work. This is really an off-duty relationship. That's what it is. Is it morally? Has he made mistakes related to his marriage? Sure. Should he, and he's going to have to pay for those with respect to his marriage. But if we start firing every employee that has a relationship or is a bad husband or a bad wife or a single parent or homosexual, I mean, if we're going to go down that road, if we're going to be the moral police, it'll be difficult to find employees at some point because that is so subjective. Or attorneys, if you're an attorney. I don't blame you. But the reality is that's what this thing has come into. These general, very general policies and claims. You heard what Captain Gardner has done. I just want to take a few more minutes to bring that back to your attention because you've got a tremendous, capable, and valuable employee. Somebody who has made those called bathhouses, safe places for our citizens to come back to the beach. It is important to be able to go to the beach and not have to worry if your children are going to get exposed to somebody who, and you can look at those photographs. And tell you what, if you're interested in it, go look at those photographs when you take them back into that, or when you deliberate. It is nasty stuff. And if I want my children to be safe, I want somebody like Captain Gardner to make sure that stuff is not coming back. You want to have somebody down there who's going to make sure your property is returned, who will go and work that case to get that camera back that has the pictures of your kids from Disney World, but you can't ever get back. You can't ever get those memories back. You want that guy. He has a lot to offer to this county, a lot, and he has put in a lot. You heard from Mr. Investigator Grays, and you heard from Sergeant Detective Fowler. Those investigators, the community, the people outside of the county view him as a tremendous asset, valuable asset to have to have in the county and have down there working these investigations. I submit to you that is something that he should be able to go back and do. To go back to work, to go back and provide this community the kind of security that he's had. I asked when you deliberate to consider those, consider his 27 years of experience. Consider the fact that he has no disciplinary conduct. Never been investigated under internal affairs ever. That he's got exceeds or outstanding for all his reviews. That has to count for something in this. It has to be something worth considering. And the fact that they've never, ever disciplined anyone else before. The last thing I want to bring up is this issue of the gun because it's an important issue. It's something that we should consider. You should understand this issue with the gun, and I think the questions to Director Sweat were very clear. There's this inference that she was going to harm herself. Well, from her testimony, she agreed, I wasn't going to harm myself. She was very clear about that. He examined her and she wasn't going to harm herself. And there's no policy that requires him to report that. None. It was discretionary, and Director Sweat said it was just discretionary. He said that. He admitted that. That was a discretionary item. But you also need to understand that she was also interviewed by Captain Dolphinmeyer. Captain Doffenmeyer did the same thing. No recommendation to have her evaluated or removed. She was also interviewed by Larry Smith and Mrs. Jones. And they never recommended that she be evaluated. Neither one of them did. Neither one of them recommended that. And if she was a danger to herself, if they thought she was a liability, the legal department, they're the first ones to come and tell you right away. Lawyers like that. Liability, we know liability. They would have been the first ones. They never removed her from service. They never had her evaluated. They never disciplined her. That's exactly what Captain Gardner did. Even if you sit back months from now and you Monday morning quarterback this thing, you come up, they did exactly, and they want you to fire him for it. Fire him for doing exactly what we consider to be the appropriate way to handle it. They haven't instituted a policy that says report. They understand that that's discretionary, and they handled it exactly the same way he did. Exactly the same way. So, in the end, I ask that you consider these matters, you consider the evidence, and you consider not just management considerations, but the actual facts that happened. These actual officers that took the stand, people that are there every day, people that see the actions and their considerations. And I thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. So does Captain Gardner. Thank you.
Can I change my paper before we?